All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. We're right at our start time here, so we're going to be kicking off in just a few seconds here. Just waiting for a few more individuals to join. Then we're going to hand it over to our friends over at Paymerang Pay. So we'll just give everyone another few seconds here. Get started. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for making time to make it to our webinar today. We're excited to introduce you all to our new partner Paymerang slash Corpay here in just a few seconds, and appreciate everyone's time. Just to kind of get through a few housekeeping items. My name's Steve Vandervelde. I'm the Director of Senior Living Partnerships at Provinet. That means I get to manage our partner ecosystem with our mutual partners like Paymerang. But then I also have a few other roles at Provinet that I fulfill. And if you haven't heard of Provinet before, basically we're an IT services organization, but we do focus in the senior living vertical. And that's a large reason for the call that we're having here today. And for some organizations across senior living, we might be their outsourced IT company. We might help augment their existing IT company. But a lot of times with where we sit in this space, we get asked, hey, who do you recommend for all these various solutions? And as we keep getting asked those types of questions, we look to expand our partner ecosystem that way. And that's where I'm excited to have Paymerang on with us today because this is something that we have been hearing more and more about is what does it look like to automate various areas of the business we do within senior living, and I think Paymerang has a great solution for that on the financial side of the house, which we're going to learn a lot more about today. So, if we look at various items and we decided to partner, and I think we got a good amount of mutual customers together. We've seen the solution. We've talked to some of these customers who are using both Provinet and Paymerang and heard, well, this is just makes a great use case to partner here and have a good recommendation in place for people who might be looking for this type of solution. So really quick, before I hand it over to our friends here, I just want to remind everyone that this is a live webinar. So we are going to be having a Q&A portion once we get through the presentation, the demo of the solution. So if you have questions, please start putting them in the Q&A part of the meeting here. I'll be monitoring that as we go. And, if there are any questions that we need to interrupt to ask, if it's pointed that way, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll have that dedicated portion of the presentation at the end here. So just a reminder, if you have questions, put them in that Q&A. We'll start queuing them up and put them to the team here. So with that, I'll hand it over to Paymerang and let them introduce themselves. And Saman, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon now. Thank you so much, Steve, for the introduction. Really excited to be with you all today and to demo our Paymerang Corpay AP automation solution, the #1 senior living AP automation company in the country, according to a Ziegler CFO Hotline survey recently. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Now, I'm not a big PowerPoint guy, but um, can can everyone see my screen right here?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect, perfect. So, again, just highlighted in September, Ziegler did a CFO hotline survey of who are you using for AP automation, and Paymerang was ranked #1, and that's a testament to our clients. We really pride ourselves in that white glove service, and our clients spoke up, and so we really value ourselves in that customer service, being responsive to our clients. But who is Paymerang? So Paymerang actually was recently acquired on July 1st by Corpay. Before that, we were a 15-year-old company, privately held, private equity held, but Corpay Corpay, we have found our forever home. Corpay is an S&P 500 company, Fortune 1000 company, and so they acquired us. They did what we do, but they acquired us because of our focus in our certain industries. For example, senior living being one of those. We work with over 400 senior living clients across 23 states now, and we process over $15 billion a year to over 600,000 vendors, and obviously a value partner leading edge. And here's some of our largest clients we work with: the John Knoxes of the world, Westminster, Menno Haven, and seamlessly working with all the accounting systems you run into in senior living, whether that's Point Click Care, QuickBooks, Microsoft, Sage Intacct, Matrix Care, NetSuite. We have partnership with all of the accounting systems, and we'll walk you through it. So I know a lot what's going on is there folks are being asked to do a lot. Usually there's not enough time in the day, but interesting stat, 84% of typical AP practitioners' day is spent on manual clinical tasks. And payment automation can actually save you up to 16 to 18 hours per week. And we'll walk you through that, right? With a good payment automation solution, you should be able to increase your efficiency, enhance your visibility, improve on accuracy, right? We see those duplicates. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Getting those invoices in and out the door and a click of a button. Going paperless, it's going to help you reduce your costs. It's going to help you ultimately free up cash flow and ultimately help you accelerate your decision making, especially during these uncertain times that we live in, right? We hear a looming recession. Ultimately, we're there, right? And this is no time for us to be spending maverick spending or erroneous spending, right? Everything is going to be up for discussion. Why are we doing this? Is there a need? And ultimately, at the end of the day, this is where fraudsters also are able to capitalize. And we'll touch on fraud in a little bit, but if folks are submitting fake invoices, and if you have, let's say, a payroll person doing AP, have you trained them? Are they able to do cross train? With a solution like this, you'll be able to easily train folks on how to spot those, mitigate compliance as well as fraud risk. So Paymerang, we're going to focus on two solutions today. We have our invoice automation solution and our payment automation solution. Essentially, with our invoice automation solution, we're getting those invoices in electronically, getting them routed, coded, approved electronically, and then with a click of a button into your accounting system. So we're doing away with that paper, and my colleague Errol will walk you through a demo in a second. And then second part we'll show you is our payment automation solution. The analogy here that I always love to use is folks are outsourcing payroll today than any time before, right? So simplistically speaking, with ADP, you say, ADP, here are the employees that need to be paid. Here's the money. Please go do all the work. I know that's very simplistically speaking, but we function similarly on the payment side. You say, Paymerang, here's the list of bills. Here's the money. Please go do all the work. And we do all that work. So, and we'll walk you through a demo in a second, but we handle all the enrollment. We enroll your vendors depending on the preferred payment types, whether that's card, ACH, or check. We do the compliance, so you don't have to worry about being NACHA compliant or PCI compliant on those cards. But what's great is obviously we'll deliver the remittance, so the vendor knows how to apply those funds. But because everything is drawn off of a forward benefit or clearing account, we're doing the reconciliation daily until that payment's been settled. And again, going back to that white glove service, everything is US based dedicated support. Our average response time to our vendors is less than 2 hours with an 87% first response resolution. Now, I'll pause there to see if there's any questions before we show you a quick demo.
Looks like we don't have any questions coming in yet, but I'm sure we will as we get into the solution. So I'll keep monitoring that, and then if we have questions come in, I'll let you guys know.
Great. I will turn things over to Errol to show you guys a demo of invoice automation first. Thank you, Errol.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, folks. I'm Errol Amaker. I'm our invoice automation sales manager here. And so very excited to be able to walk you through a demonstration of sort of that front end solution. We are very agnostic with most ERPs within the senior living space. So whether you're using a PCC, a Matrix Care, a Sage Intacct, we've got you covered. So we'll talk about kind of the differences in the types of integrations a little bit later. But we'll keep this fairly high level. Certainly, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or we can address them at the end. And again, if you're interested in having a much more in-depth conversation, we can accommodate that as well. So ultimately, with the invoice side of the house, we're going to set up two different types of users. One is going to be a processor, and really that role is reserved for the folks that are in the business office on the accounting team that really manage the workflow of invoices, right? So receiving them in, getting them out for the proper approval and potentially coding, and then ultimately getting them queued up and ready to go into the accounting module itself. On the other hand of that, the other type of user we'll set up is an approver. So that's going to be for your department heads, your managers, employees, whoever might be actually approving individual invoices. They're going to have their own separate role, and we'll walk through both and what they look like today. The screen we're looking at now is the processor role. Now, we wanted to keep things very intuitive, very simple to use, just a clean user interface, not only within this system, but you'll see it in payments alike, so that it's not a big lift to get trained and comfortable using the system. So that being said, we have a couple pages up top, and we have our workflow queues here to the left. Now, our offerings are modular, but I do want to also point out, based on user permission, if you did want to use multiple of our products, you'd actually be able to click on this waffle, and you can bounce back and forth between depending on your preference. So it makes it nice and easy. It's a one-stop shop, one login, and you can kind of access whatever you need to access. But shifting back to invoices, everything is going to come in and land in what we would call the unprocessed workflow queue. So there's a number of ways to ingest the invoices so that they land within this queue. Number one way that we have our clients default to, because it really eliminates a lot of additional touch points really on the part of the processor, is if you don't already have an invoice or an AP dedicated email address set up, we'll have you set that up. Within that, we'll help you configure an auto forwarding role. So whatever vendors are currently sending electronic copies, are capable and willing to send electronic copies, we'll kind of assist with that during implementation to try to get that number as high as possible. But those that send it to that inbox, it'll go through the forwarding rule I mentioned. We'll do a virus scan to make sure there's no nefarious attachments, and it'll land here in unprocessed. That way, whoever's primarily working out of this processor role can log in, and they can just start working out of that queue immediately. Right? They don't have to worry about collecting the invoice, getting it scanned in, or saving it, uploading it, things along those lines. Now, that's the ideal world, but we certainly understand that there's always going to be paper in the mix, and that is totally fine. The best way to handle those would be to set up scan to email rules with scanners across your organization. Most scanners have that functionality. You can program in that invoice dedicated email address as a send-off option. That way you can scan it in, whether it's one or maybe you had a stack of 5 invoices, for example, and you can get them scanned in that way, goes through the forwarding rule, and again, lands here in unprocessed. Best way to handle any bulk scanning is really going to come down to user preference. I will highlight quickly the 2 options you do have. One is our invoice separator. A lot of folks will print these out, laminate them, stick them by the scanners. That way you can reuse them. And this really acts as a page break. So you can stick these in between, scan them all in, and then the system will split them out accordingly right here within your unprocessed queue. The other option is you could scan all 5 in. They would technically show up as one unprocessed item without using the separator, but you can actually come under this view all pages section. And then let's say again, for example, there's 5 invoices here, select, split them out within here, and it will do the same thing. So again, that's going to come down to user preference, whatever you find more efficiently within your use case. I do want to point out this is also where both processors, and I'll show you on the approver side of the house, can add any supporting documentation. So if you do have any additional items that you want neatly packaged and kind of archived together with the invoice itself, whether that's a quote, a packing slip, additional receipts, anything along those lines, that can be added in at both roles. Last but not least, you can upload invoice files. So if you're having to log into vendor portals and draw those down, that's certainly an option. But again, we're trying to get everything funneling through that centralized inbox. Once it's hitting unprocessed, this is when the Amazon Web Services textract engine will start reading through everything to scrape off the details we see to the right here. So from vendor name to total amount, Given that the information is included on the invoice, this should automatically populate. Now, it is contingent on the vendor including that information, and I'm not going to lie to you and say it's 100% accurate because no scanning software out there is at that point. But it is much, much better than older OCR technology because it's not relying on the format of the invoice, right? It's not zonal. You're not having to train it. It, again, will read through each piece of text to pull the information off here. Now, certainly you can edit or adjust these fields if you'd like. Maybe you're short paying an invoice, changing a due date, something along those lines. But the overarching idea here is it's eliminating a lot of keystrokes, right? Whoever's working out of the processor role can now just quickly glance, make sure it all looks good, do a quick review, and not have to actually go in and type in all this information. Moving along here, and please do keep in mind, within this generic demo site, this is what our GL structure looks like. It's going to vary a little bit dependent upon whatever accounting package you are utilizing. So if it's a PCC, it's going to look a little bit different. If it's intact, it's going to look a little bit different, as well as with matrix care. The coding itself can be done by either role, right? So if you are the primary coders within the business office and on the accounting team, it's nice and easy. You can actually go ahead and start typing out of that GL string, both numerically and alphabetically. It'll narrow down your search, and you can go ahead and plug it in. And I'll go ahead and plug in the total amount. Now you'll notice that the total balance will calculate down to 0 since I have attributed this entire amount to this account. You can split invoices as many times as you need, right? The only thing that obviously matters is that remaining balance should end up zeroing out once you've made all of those different splits. We do offer an intelligent GL suggester as well. So if you have the same vendor that's always being coded to the same, couple of different accounts, what would happen is a modal would pop up here and you could select from that list. Moving along here, we can add the description, and both GL and description can be done by the approver role as well. So if you want that responsibility to fall on your approvers, as a processor, you can actually just leave this section blank, and then they won't be able to approve the invoice until they've added their proper information. Comment section, this is kind of like a chat function within the system. So if you're requiring additional context, or maybe you want to make a comment, just let's say, for example, I'll say approve as soon as possible. This comment section keeps a running log of everything that has been commented on the invoice with a user and time and date stamp. If it is a possible duplicate invoice, and so our system will flag that based off of the same vendor, invoice number, and dollar amount, we will have this pop-up warning here. We just want to be safe. We don't want anything slipping through the cracks. If for whatever reason, it's a situation where you do need to pay through when it does pop on all three of those criteria, you do have that option, but it will require you to actively click through that warning. And then the approver section, we have a couple options. I'll go ahead and add myself in here as the level 1 approver. So with the base product, you can add as many approvers as you need, right? It will be tiered. So if it's sent off to me at level 1, and for example, if I added Saman at level 2, once I've reviewed and approved it, it will then go ahead and actually send that out to me first. I've approved it. It will automatically then route it over to Saman. You do have the option of bypassing approval. So the use case here to point out is if the invoice went directly to a manager, they put a wet signature on it, put their coding, whatever the case is, and brought it in and said, hey, this is ready to go. Obviously, you don't want to replicate that approval within our system. But in order to keep an electronic record and audit trail of that, you can go ahead and still select them as the approver here when you're bypassing, click pre-approve, and then when you click this ready to post button, it's actually going to skip needing to do it within the system, move it to your ready to post queue, and that's where you can start moving that information in to your accounting software that you're currently utilizing. Last two things to touch on here, and I will go ahead and send this off for approval. Recent vendor invoices. If you guys are paying the same vendors pretty consistently, which we find that a lot of times that does seem to be the case, this will show you the last couple of invoices. So instead of having to go use our search bar or run a report, if you need to quickly review that invoice right here, you can pull it up and not have to worry about actually going elsewhere and clicking out of this screen if you just need to quickly reference it. And then your activity history is your audit trail. Once everything looks good, we can go ahead and send this off for approval, and we'll give you one extra layer of warning for any possible duplicates. Last thing to mention here is we do have approval work streams as an option, as an add-on as well. So we can go through, and if you have any dollar thresholds, specific vendors, specific rules for your approval process, we can set those up within the system so that they're suggested, much like with the GL suggestion tool as well. So we'll navigate now over into what the approvers see. So their screen is a very kind of stripped down version of what we looked at. Oh, I shouldn't have gotten logged out here. Maybe I did. Of what we looked at with the processor role. So it's not as feature bloated in the sense of what your approvers would need to see, right? We intentionally made this very easy to navigate for them. So it's just a workflow and a reports tab, and then they just have 3 queues over here. Now we can see I have 3 invoices here. That Henry Schein invoice came over with a comment. Anytime I have stuff in my queue, I'm going to get a daily email reminder sent to me every morning, and it's a singular email. It'll show the entire summary of the invoices I need to approve, and there's a hyperlinked button within the email. So when I click it, it'll take me straight to my login so I can come into the system. That is very nice because it's kind of making the system the automated follow-up bad guy, if you will. So if I sit on these invoices for a couple days, I will be consistently reminded until I come in and clear out my queue. This is going to speed up that overarching approval process quite a bit, which ought to be able to get you to get those payments out the door much quicker as well. Once I've logged in, I can start my review process. So I'll pull up our Henry Schein invoice here. Like I mentioned earlier, I can merge in supporting documentation. So maybe I received these goods and I want to add in my packing slip. I can review all of the details. This is where if you allow them to edit or add their coding, they can do so. We can also certainly lock this down. So if you don't want them to have the ability to edit or adjust this, we can configure that. They can add to the description, review any comments. Hey, this all looks good. We'll go ahead and approve and then confirm that approval. So realistically, once someone's comfortable using the system, and we certainly handle all of the training for all users, should only take them about 10 to 15 seconds per invoice, barring any complications or something looking wonky or incorrect to them. Only other thing to touch on here with the approvers is that they will have some self-service in the form of their reports tab. Each approver has their own specific reports tab. And so what I mean by that is they will not be able to see the master list of invoices you've processed through us, just those that they've either come in and approved, doing what I just showed you there, or that were bypassed on their behalf. So that's nice because they can come in and see historically the number of invoices, the total dollar amount associated. If I want to know, for example, maybe I'm in facilities, how much I'd approve to Granger over the course of this fiscal quarter, maybe to a specific GL account even. I can run any of these filtered reports. When I apply those, it'll adjust those numbers. I can export the information to Excel. And then I can very easily actually go reference, whether through a report or the search, any of my old invoices. So I don't have to reach out to folks on the accounting team, have you go dig up a paper copy just to say, hey, it cost $189 last time you ordered from them. Makes it super helpful. The approvers love this too, because again, it just saves everyone a little bit of time and headache if there are any inquiries there. Now we'll pop back over here into the processor role. This is where we can kind of finish things out and get everything moved over into your respective accounting module. So everything that has moved into ready to post is what you're ready to move into your AP modules. It's all going to be locked down at this point, except for the description. So if you do need to make any last minute tweaks, you can certainly do so here. You'll choose the funding account that this is going to be paid out of. You'll choose the reflected posted date. This is where it will vary a little bit dependent on what system you're on. So for some context here, we have what we call API connections. So for any cloud-based accounting softwares such as Sage Intacct, and we're partners with them and have an API connection with them, we'll be able to push that over automatically just by clicking this Post to GL button. So when you do that, it'll feed it over, create the transaction, as well as send over all of the PDF documentation of everything that was added within the system and the invoice itself. If it's what we call an SFTP or a file integration, the only difference is when you click Post to GL, this is where you start your grouping process of batching the invoices up. So what I mean by that is when we click Post to GL on that invoice, we do our review, for example, of this Granger invoice. Hey, this looks good. Funding account, posted date, click it again. However many invoices you want to batch up in a single file to export and import into your accounting software, once you're ready, you'll come up to this posting page. We don't have a limit on the amount of invoices you can include, but when you're ready, you'll click this Add New Lot button. And when I do that, you'll see that it will create a lot of the invoices that have recently been clicked through. So we can see the 2 invoices that I did, and then a colleague of mine must have had some that they had queued up as well. This is where you can then export it, import it into your accounting software, and it will do the same thing, right? It eliminates all the necessary data entry, and it will create those transactions for you. So this is a huge, huge time-saving opportunity. We hear all the time that, if you got a stack of invoices, depending on your volume, obviously it varies a little bit from organization to organization, but usually AP spending the better part of a day or two just getting the invoices collected and ready to go by going into the vendor record, keying in all that information, moving on to the next. If you got 50, 25 invoices you're doing a week, that's a huge time savings opportunity, like I mentioned, and just makes life a little bit easier, reduces keystroke errors as well. If I'm on my 20th invoice and I'm typing fast, I might hit a 5 instead of a 6, right? So it's gonna reduce a lot of headache with that invoice process. So that is the overall process itself of getting the invoices into our system, handling the approval and coding, and getting them over into your respective ERPs. We always want to keep your ERP the central source of truth, right? So that's why we feed everything in. And then on the payment side, you'll actually be pulling everything out in the form of what we would call a payments file. So last couple things to touch on, and we can talk a little bit further and we'll show you what payments looks like. I just wanted to point out a couple other tools you'll have access to within this processor role. One of the big ones that I get a lot of feedback from our users that is super helpful is this dashboard here. This is a great visibility tool, and a lot of folks will log in and actually just come straight to the dashboard to get kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on before getting a little bit more granular within those workflow queues that we went through. Under the waiting for approval side of the house here, you're actually going to have a list of all of your approvers and how many invoices they're sitting on. So whoever's kind of the primary culprit, if you will, and in this case we see Saman is sitting on 3 invoices, you can click the caret and you just have full visibility as to where they are, right? So opposed to if you're using interoffice mail with maybe paper invoices, or even if you're emailing invoices around for approval, if someone gets busy, gets lost under a stack of papers on their desk, if it drops to the bottom of their inbox, it still requires a lot of internal follow-up to make sure that these things are getting approved quickly and understanding where they might sit in the process, right? So this gives you, again, quick access to understand who's sitting on what. And I'll pick on myself here. If you see a red bell icon next to any particular invoice, that's going to mean it's aged out past our 7-day threshold. So that will quickly visually indicate for you something's going on here. It's bottlenecking with Arrow. Let's say in this case, I went on vacation, didn't let you guys know, and I sent it off to you for approval anyway, right? Maybe for this Henry Schein one, this is actually time sensitive, and I need to actually send it to someone else that could approve it on my behalf in order to go ahead and get it queued up and ready for payment. It's going to take you to that individual invoice, and if I scroll down, and if I remove myself and actually change this over to Saman, for example, it's going to automatically reroute to him. So it's going to avoid invoices from going further stale if they've reached that 7-day threshold. The other side of the dashboard is your ready to post. So instead of scrolling through the ready to post queue, right, in our case, we had 16 invoices, not crazy. But if you're doing a high volume and you're constantly having, a couple hundred or 50 or above invoices in that queue, you can come to your ready to post dashboard, do some filtering up top, and then this will neatly silo them off by the days in which they were approved. So again, a lot of times, processor, log in the morning, we can see what was approved already that day or even the previous day and say, okay, all these are ready to go. Let's do our final review. When I click on the invoice, it'll take me to that specific one under the ready to post queue. Choose our last couple items here with the funding account and date, and then go ahead and get it moved over into the respective ERP. The report section. So we went over how the approvers only see what is necessary to them. With the processor role, this is kind of your virtual filing cabinet, right? You're going to have access to every single invoice you've moved through our system. You'll have all the same filtered reports as the approvers do, but you can also sort by the status of the invoice. You can sort by specific approvers. And then one that we added in fairly recently was the aging invoices report. So what a lot of folks will do, come in once a week, run this to see if anything has gotten to that point. In this case, we have 3 invoices for 20 grand, not an insubstantial amount of money. So maybe it's time we check out what's going on here, who they're sitting with. We see we have multiple approvers, and that way you can click in and adjust and again, reroute, figure out what's going on and why it's going stale. The other very nice thing about the reports tab I will mention is we can help you set up auditor access to this. As a matter of fact, after we set up all of your initial user base, you do have the freedom to adjust that within our system. You don't necessarily have to reach out to your implementation specialist or client support specialist or even our support team. For example, if you want to add in an auditor, you can just add their information in here. And that way they can access the reports tab, but they will not be able to edit or change anything. It just gives them the freedom to pull information as they need it, right? They don't have to come to your team and say, we have 200 invoices from your previous fiscal year. Go dig them up. We want to see all of the documentation to support them, the audit trail, things along those lines. So it makes audit season a lot smoother for everybody involved. And that is the overall pretty much high-level workflow of invoice automation. Again, we can have much more granular conversations specific to your use case, but that's going to cover pretty much everything to show you the overall workflow of getting everything queued up and ready for the payment side of the house.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any questions?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's awesome to kind of see the workflow and process and all the kind of repetitive otherwise steps that you would have if you didn't have this automation in place. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of show us that. But yeah, we are starting to get a few questions come in. So just a reminder to everyone on the meeting here, if you have a question, please use that Q&A feature. We do have everyone else, kind of muted. So we're just running all questions through the Q&A part of this meeting. So please post them there. But the first question I had come through is about implementation. So, if someone did decide to move forward with a solution like Paymerang, what does the implementation look like? How long does it take to kind of get up and running, and what's needed from a customer perspective to roll out this platform?
Yeah, certainly. And I'll talk in terms of invoice automation because I know Saman can cover on the payment side of the house. It depends a little bit on the system that you're currently utilizing, right? Overarchingly, the process we follow is 3 meetings. So we can do that as quickly or as spread out as you would like. We've had some folks that said, hey, we want to get this done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And when they delegate the resources, we've done it as short as a week. I would say on average, about 3 weeks to a month, because it does require usually training folks outside of just the accounting team. Mm-hmm. And again, we handle that training in a number of ways. Everyone will be provided a user guide. We can provide recorded trainings, and we can set up individual calls with departments for folks that might need a little extra attention. But the baseline implementation process, first meeting is basically a kickoff. We'll get all of the deliverables depending on the integration setup. We'll talk through that. We'll do a refresher demo. We'll make sure everything's set up with the email and the forwarding rule, and then we'll schedule up the second call. Second call, we'll go through another refresher. We'll train the main processors. And actually on that second call, we will post over your first invoices. So we'll make sure live on the call that everything's working properly, it's uploading, and those can transfer into your accounting software. And then the additional calls from there are going to be check-in calls or training focus calls. So you're looking at probably, on the conservative end, about 6 to 7 total hours spread out over 3+ meetings, depending on what's necessary for your use case.
Okay, got it. All right. Another question here is in terms of cost, and I'm assuming that can vary greatly depending on a number of factors, but is there anything you can share on, what a solution like Paymerang might cost a provider?
Yeah, we have pretty standard and very simple pricing. To your point, Steve, it's going to vary a little bit on your invoice volume ultimately. We charge a one-time implementation fee. That can also vary depending on if you would like some of those enhancements that I alluded to. But the baseline is a one-time $5,000 implementation fee. And then we charge $1 per invoice with a minimum of 500. So again, this can be adjusted a little bit based on volume. But the bottom line is we try to make that as close to your actual invoice volume as possible. That way it's a little bit easier to budget. Right now, different times of the year, obviously, different volumes of invoices. We want to try to make it as fair as possible. But that's it. We don't charge user license or ongoing yearly fees or anything along those lines. It's just going to be the transactional fees and the initial setup cost.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Another question we had here is, will the approver only have permissions to post invoices, or is there something different there?
So the approvers will only have the ability to approve their invoices or reference their previous invoices. Only processors can actually go through the process of posting them over. Again, contingent on the ERP integration type. So that way, whoever is on the accounting team gets the final review, right? We want that to, just in case, we don't want someone approving it and automatically posting it without the final set of eyes being able to verify that it all looks good, especially in use cases where the approver is doing the coding. Because we find accounting knows the chart of accounts a little bit better usually than the folks outside of that team, and they want to be able to verify and make sure everything looks good.
Okay, got it. All right. And a question I had actually, as we're kind of looking at this and just thinking of, automation in general and what that can mean for senior living kind of across the board. I'm curious if you guys have any studies or any figures on what the return on investment could look like, or what this could mean in terms of cost savings just for time that you're saving with automating these types of processes.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a loaded question because, again, it varies so much from use case to use case. That is something that we go through. For example, if Steve, you were at a facility and you wanted to have a more in-depth conversation, part of kind of our ongoing process is doing ROI analysis through what we would call a vendor spend file. That's where we kind of can bounce off of our internal database how much spend is attributed to folks that we already pay, we know how to pay, that might be taking certain methods of payment. On the invoice side, again, it kind of depends on the volume, right? On average, and take this with a grain of salt, on average, we find that in a standard kind of manual process, most folks can process roughly 5 to 6 invoices per hour. And that's kind of the whole process said and done, keying, tracking down, things along those lines. With an automated system, usually that's going to bump to 25 to 30. It's going to drastically increase the efficiency there. One of the biggest time savings between the two systems is getting rid of the data entry, right? That just, even the best of the best, that's going to take the better part of a day, depending on their volume, just to get everything ready to go for that check run.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of Errol's question, but yeah, we've seen 5 times on average more invoices processed. But according to a recent Arden article, Arden is a big research company that does a lot of these AP automation research. They're estimating to process a manual invoice is almost around $11 to $14 without automation to process one invoice.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could start to look at, that's a pretty impressive ROI there. If you're charging something around, $1 per invoice to save 13 to 14 per invoice, that's a pretty good argument, I would say, for considering that.
Absolutely. Well,
All
Steve,
right.
if there's no other questions, I'd love to kind of walk folks through the payment side of the house now.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's go ahead and shift to that.
Perfect. So we've gotten all those invoices in electronically routed, coded, approved electronically, and electronically uploaded into your accounting system, and you're ready to pay your bills. So instead of your AP person cutting, stuffing, mailing, doing the follow-up, the stop check, the reissue check, the positive pay, payee positive, a whole number of different things going on today. Instead of all that, you're going to simply export a file. Again, like we said, add a Sage Intacct, Microsoft, PCC, MatrixCare, you name it, we partner with them. You simply export a file out of their accounting system that tells us who to pay, how much, and the remittance. It's doing a virus scan as well as taking all those payments and splitting it into its own individual payments. But 99% of the time, AP will know this is the right file they pulled out of their accounting system. But here's our totals. Here are the controls, 15 payments totaling $73,597. You can't click view import details and the vendor name, vendor ID, and how much drops in. So if everything looks good, we're going to create our batch. Well, we're going to confirm our batch first. And so here's our batch of payments we just uploaded. If you click on that and scroll down here to the bottom, here's all, now you'll see actions on both sides of screens, but here's all the payments in that batch, right? So where's my favorite one? So the vendor will always get this remittance information so they know how to apply these funds. But if I'm looking at this payment, $13,000, here's all the invoices, $3,000 for Snickers, $5,000 for Almond Joys. Holy crow, what's going on, right? You don't get a body like mine without eating a lot of Snickers. What's going on, right? You can easily go back into your accounting system, take a look at that invoice, or you can click here, save this payment for later, and it just sits at the top till you tell us to pay it. Very much akin to a CFO putting a check in the drawer to save for a week. We will also flag for possible duplicates on the payment side, but if everything looks good, you're going to create your batch, and guess what? AP is all done. Now, a big difference between us and anyone else is the way we do approvals and funding. So we do not draw the funds of your account. We use a for benefit of clearing account. So as an approver, you can come in, take a look at these payments, hit approve. But because a lot of times our clients have to initiate a wire from their bank to our for benefit or clearing account for this total sum, and that's typically a CFO who will initiate that wire, and they're not going to approve these payments. They're not going to approve that wire without approving these payments. You can also use that wire as your approval, and we have this PDF that you can send along saying, hey, here's all the payments for the week to Paymerang. Here's how much. Here's the description. Go ahead and initiate that wire. At that point, Steve, you're done. You just paid and reconciled all your vendor payments for the week. That's where we get to work. So here's this batch of payments we just uploaded. So we work with 600,000 vendors. We work with 400 senior living communities. If we're paying that vendor today, we're going to pay them the same way for you as we do for everyone else. But our three preferred payment methods are card, ACH, or checks. Now the checks, they're privately logoed, your name, your logo, but it's our account and bank information at the bottom of that check. So we're shielding your bank information from being out in the world. And guess what? We too have three-way match positive pay and payee positive pay. And if there's any disputes with the bank, if there's any fraud, we take that on. But let's say if this is a unique vendor to your community, we've never paid them before, we'll send them a check, but we'll pick up the phone and contact the vendor. Hello, Sunday Times, looking to make a payment on behalf of community X. Do you accept Visa for invoice settlement? If they say yes, you'll see in real time that check change from check to card. If they say no, we say we're trying to still get rid of paper checks. Do you accept ACH? If they say yes, we send them a secure link. They log in. They provide their banking information. None of our employees see it. We don't take it over the phone. None of your employees see it. It's not stored anywhere at your community. And that is an enormous security aspect we offer. I can't tell you how many times some of my largest senior living clients, we've been able to save them hundreds of thousands of dollars because of our ACH enrollment campaign that we do. But let's say if a vendor does want to change their bank information, you send us that email or that fake invoice. We pick up the phone, we contact the vendor that we have on file, not on that fake invoice or that email, and we'll talk through it with them. Is this legit? If it's not, we'll pick up the phone, contact the FBI, get that account shut down, hopefully get people arrested. But if it is legit and they do want to change their bank information, there's three things that need to happen. they need to log into their multi-factor authentication portal like this one, provide their old bank information and their new one. If they can't do any of those, we're going to send them a check. Our CEO says it best. ACH is the safest way, but also the most dangerous way to pay someone. I know that sounds very contradictory, but that's because what we just talked about, right? If you're getting good banking information, and you pay that vendor, that's great, because the bank will just look at the other vendors, say, oh, they're in good standings, and send that. With Paymerang, we're a layer between you, us, and the banks. So when we contact the vendors, get them enrolled, our fraud department is looking at all these payments before they go out the door. And so there's a lot that we do. But to wrap up here, the time you want to keep in mind is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. As long as we have the batch and funds by 2:30 p.m. Eastern, the payments are out the door the same day. The checks are printed. ACH, they'll get an email with the remittance at the bottom of that email, and the funds are deposited the next business day. With credit card payments, we go online, we pick up the phone, email, fax are sent out right away. But because everything is drawn off that for benefit or clearing account, we're doing the reconciliation daily. As soon as you export that file, all your payments will automatically be marked as paid and settled. So 90% of card payments we make settle within 6.5 business days, but we'll wait until 7 business days, contact the vendor. Did you get it? If they didn't get it, we do the stop card, reissue that on the spot. ACH, pretty simple. Let's get rejected by the bank. We'll contact them the next business day, have them update their bank information. With checks, let's be honest, the United States Postal Service is terrible. Believe it or not, on average, our checks actually settle within 6.5 business days, but we'll wait until 28 business days. We'll contact the vendor. Did you get it? If they didn't get it, we do the stop check, reissue that on the spot. Now I'm going to pause there, Steve, to see if there's any questions.
Just another reminder, yeah, use that Q&A if questions are coming in. I don't see anything right now, Saman, but it's really cool to see, what you guys are doing in terms of security. I think as, cyber attacks and phishing attempts kind of kick up, especially in senior living, it's really cool to see that you guys kind of built that out into your platform. But
yeah,
no questions at this time.
And to your point, all I even add, the most fraud we still see is check fraud, right? Because people are intercepting those. You have postal service workers literally cashing vendor checks. That just happened in Pennsylvania not too long ago. But with credit card payments that we make, we've actually seen fraud decrease, because those are preloaded one-time virtual cards. And there's ways that we have security features where we're able to recover that money. But to wrap up here, very similar to what Errol showed on the invoicing side, we call this the Paymerang Google. So at any point, you have visibility into any payment out there. So now the best practice, if a vendor contacts you and says, where's my money, is to have them contact us. Again, our average response time to our vendors is less than 2 hours, with an 87% first response resolution. But Peak Performance Holdings, it looks like Paymerang paid you and you've already cashed that check. And guess what? Once they cash that check, you actually will have front and back image of that check inside of Paymerang. So you can send this along and say, hey, you misapplied those funds. Let's talk about why.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. I talk faster than the internet today, I guess. But our clients love the reports tab, very similar to the invoicing tab. So this is great during audit season. You can provide these to your auditors. All kinds of reports you can run if you ever had to do any refunds. Now, this is my demo site, so let me go back. But if we ever had to do any refunds, if you had any outstanding payments, it would all just pre-populate here. So, and the status, the check number, the payment amount, settlement date, outstanding, refunds, reissue, all here. And you can easily click here and export that to a CSV. But with that, that's the best quote we ever got from our client is actually, by the time it takes you to fill up your cup of coffee in the morning, you've just paid and reconciled all your vendor payments for the week. It's really that simple. On the payment side, for implementation wise, it depends on, like Errol said, on the accounting system you have. We just did a case study with Matrix Care. We can get you up and running on the payment portion alone in less than 2 weeks, less than 4 hours of your staff time. With PCC, it's typically around 3 to 4 weeks. PCC, we have a great partnership with them, and they do a lot of the work for you to implement. So it's not a huge implementation wise on there. And Sage Intacct, very similar to Matrix Care, where it's less than 5 hours of your staff time over 3 weeks. But with that, that's really the whole process of from invoice receipt all the way to payment reconciliation, giving you tremendous visibility into what you have out there, better security, like we talked about, and costs, lowering your cost of how you're doing this with paper checks.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Saman and Errol, for kind of walking us through what that can look like. And I mean, that's what we were so impressed with, I think, as we talked to other mutual customers that we both have, and just what it's meant for them, you know, not only in terms of cost and time savings with automation, but also the security implications there too. And, you know, how that's just a better stance overall, as opposed to what the traditional model kind of looks like. So yeah, I appreciate your time. It looks like we don't have any other questions coming in at this time. But I guess we'll oh, looks like maybe we got something here. Oh yeah, just saying it's good to, you know, good job today, everyone. So yeah, thanks for that.
Oh, awesome. We love the feedback, and thank you guys. Thank you, Provinet, for the partnership.
Yeah.
We're excited. This is our first webinar together. We're excited to partner with you guys. I just want to put my contact information on here if folks are interested in reaching out. We always say we might not be the best fit for your community, but we're happy to have a conversation and point you to the right direction of what you're looking to accomplish in terms of accounts payable.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. And I guess, you know, as a closing announcement here too, we are recording this session, so we are going to make it available for everyone to share. We'll have that out pretty quickly here. I think we just usually need a few days just to kind of get it polished and sent out. So we'll send it to the whole group of attendees and registrations, and, you know, have it out there for repeat viewing if others want to share it. But yeah, thank you both for your time today. It's great to see you again. And yeah, looking forward to learning more as we continue along the partnership here.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Errol.
Bye.